Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. Well, guys, I am so pleased to be joined by Jim Hanson today. This is Jim's second time on the channel. He's a cool dude. We're going to have a great conversation. And Jim is the president of Security Studies Group and previously served in the Army Special Forces. He has now shifted his focus to the battle going on for the soul of America. There's an ongoing effort by the activist left to claim the country is infected with systemic racism, and the very core of America is rotten and must be replaced. Jim has written an awesome book that has just come out, I believe, called Winning the Second Civil War Without Firing a Shot. I have linked the book in the description below. Jim, it's great to see you again.
Oh, blast. Happy to be back.
Well, I'm really particularly thrilled about this. And, we were just talking about this briefly before we went live. But, right after January 6th, I was hearing so many rumblings from the right and them being just completely freaked out about how the media was handling it, how the Democrats were handling it, basically trying to paint everyone that is not a Democrat or a leftist as a terrorist, as an insurrectionist. I was actually legitimately afraid that we were going to have a real civil war. And I felt like I was sitting in the middle looking at both sides going, oh no, this is bad. It's not good. And I like the approach that you've taken with this book, because it's got this line right here, without firing a shot, which I'm very much a fan of. So tell us about the book and why you wrote it.
Well, it started last year. I mean, obviously, we've been coming to this point for a while, and the book travels through kind of the history of how right and left got to our current state, starting at about the Cold War. Mm-hmm. And there was a beginning where the right focused on national security, foreign policy, and business, and the left focused on fundamentally transforming our country into some quasi-socialist state. And unfortunately, both of us were relatively successful at what we were doing. The problem is they were working at home. And while we built, the economic engines of America and defeated the Soviet Union and made the world a safer place than it ever could have been without us, they took over academia. Then from there, they took over the rest of the education system because they trained the teachers to teach the things that compromise or comprise wokeness and the liberal agenda, then the progressive agenda, now the woke agenda, as they keep moving it. And then they got the culture and they got the permanent bureaucracy. And now they literally are running this republic in ways that are going to run it into the ground unless we band together and push back.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think you summed it up there really nicely. And I think, the thing that I'm really most afraid of, you already hit on it, is the education system, in that the public schools, I don't know how to solve this problem, because not only are most of the teachers infected, the teacher trainers are infected. So it's in the schools, it's in the universities, it's in the media, it's in the military, up and down the military now. They're even doing training on it in the academies. It's in all the major corporations in America. I mean, how do we even go about starting to solve this problem and fighting back?
First thing you got to do is take one step in the right direction. So let's first understand it's a generational problem. They've been at this for multiple generations, and they have trained multiple generations of students and teachers. So we're that far behind. However, we also have a major bonus from COVID in that it showed parents what was going on in their schools. And I noticed you were having a great fight on Twitter with a bunch of people about whether there should be cameras continuing in the classroom. And they don't want that, because they don't want parents to know what they're doing with the kids. They don't want that exposed. So if we're going to change that, and I think it is by far the number one thing, we either win on education or we lose overall. Now, that doesn't mean we have to replace all the public schools, but it means we have to find alternatives at every level where kids are going to hear something other than America is a racist, white supremacist, misogynistic, homophobic, horrible place that must atone for its sins. Well, no, I don't think that's true. So how do we do that? It's charter schools, it's co-ops for parents who don't want their kids in public schools. It's homeschooling. And here's my trick. Here's the one that I think if we do this, we can win the game. It's information technology workers. All right. They are the future of this country, right? The most innovative jobs, the cool place to be, all of that is in technology. Right now, the technology companies are woke, right?
Yeah.
Because all of their leadership and all of them, have been through universities and they've been indoctrinated and they had to do that. But tech workers by nature, a lot of them are not really woke activist types. A lot of them are kind of on the spectrum, and they want to be left alone. They have a very libertarian bent, but they can be bullied into accepting the woke agenda so they can be left alone. So if the activists come in and they're saying, you will take this class, you today will wear, the trans hat, and then tomorrow you will wear a Latinx hat, and then the next day, and you'll do your penance for each one of these things because you're a bad person, they'll do it. But if we offer an alternative to that, and even the funny thing is, Google may be leading the way on this.
Really?
And this is funny. All right. Google now offers certificates for technical training. So instead of, say, a 4-year degree in, computer sciences, where you are 4 to 8 years behind the newest programming languages, they say, we need Python programmers. So come take a 6-month class, get a certification in Python programming, and we'll hire you. So they get what they want. And in addition, they don't get a woke, indoctrinated person who's going to cause them internal problems at their company. So that's the trick. That's the one. We take our normal education, we add vocational tech and homeschooling and the other things, and we steal the IT workers from the left.
All right. Do you think that there's any hope for fixing the universities?
No. No. All right, I'll go with no. And then let me qualify that by saying we need to almost abandon the educated elite as a constituency for the country going forward, because the last 2 generations got ruined. All right, so we can peel some off. Some of them are going to see the light, and that happens. But the idea that is the place where our team, and when I say our team, my team is the conservative, libertarian right, the non-crazy left. Actually, I would say the anti-woke left is my team. If you're in that crew, we can talk. But we can't fix those people who've already been indoctrinated. So write them off for now, politically, and somewhat in a way culturally, and focus on the populist group that now is disaffected with the left. They saw the COVID shutdown killed their businesses, killed their jobs, ruined school for their kids. The Black Lives Matter and Antifa mobs burned their businesses in their neighborhoods. And they saw that the left can't help them with that. And they're looking at the 57 gender crew and all that and going, that's not the world I live in. So bring those people into a big tent conservatarian, kind of populist movement, and then let us be the populist tolerant party for the short term, build new education, and then start training a free thinking follow on for the next couple generations.
Now, I think, generally speaking in life, things can be both good and bad at the same time. And I look at the past year, and I think that, we have seen, from my perspective, a lot of acceleration in the last year, especially since George Floyd. They kind of went absolutely crazy. I think combined with the COVID lockdowns, we saw things go at a really rapid pace. At the same time, because of all of this, it kind of exposed what they were doing on a deeper level. Now, I suspect, when did you start writing this book? I'm just curious.
Last summer.
That's kind of what I thought.
I wrote it up to the election, and then I waited for the election to see what was going to happen, and so I could write a finish to it. And then as the election aftermath went crazy, I kept kind of holding my fire. And then when January 6th happened, I said, okay, this is enough of an end result. And I finished it up in the next 2 weeks.
Were you at all surprised at what happened on January 6th?
Yes, a little bit. I didn't think our team was going to riot. And that's one thing I think we're usually better at. I understood the frustration. I didn't share a lot of the voting machine and some of the other things that were beefs, but there were so many fundamentally wrong things about that election. As far as mail-in ballots, as far as changing the rules for signature verification. But what happened was the Trump team didn't file the lawsuits before the election like they needed to. And so they got thrown out afterwards. And that was a failure of the RNC and the Trump campaign. That wasn't, a cheating by the justice system. Some of it was sketchy, but in the end, I knew there were legitimate beefs and there were too many unlegitimate beefs, but I didn't think we'd go and bust into the Capitol. And that really hurt me. I was very unhappy with that because it gave the left the excuse they needed to do what you mentioned, which is to criminalize conservatism. And now they want to use that 3-hour riot to act as if it was a planned insurrection, and then all conservatives were essentially backing this play to topple Congress, which is absurd.
It's crazy.
But they're doing it. And unfortunately, we gave them that opportunity by what was essentially, the same as any day of a Black Lives Matter protest last year. Yes, it happened at the U.S. Capitol, and iconically, it's over here somewhere. I don't know.
I can see the monument.
Right? Yeah, but it's iconic, and it was related to a function of government. But Antifa's attacked government buildings all last year. The Black Lives Matter movement has committed domestic terrorism by influencing local governments to change their policies. So those things get washed away and left under the table, while the Democrats and the left now can focus on this one day as if it, was emblematic of the entire right. It's a shame.
People forget, Black Lives Matter actually sieged the White House last summer to the point where Trump had to be taken to the bunker. And then instead of reporting that Black Lives Matter sieged the White House, they reported that Trump was a coward for going to the bunker.
Right. And that's the shame. Now, the worst thing that's going on right now is all the arrests they've made. They've got this gigantic task force of people. Pretty much everybody at DOJ is working, the trespass case at the Capitol. And they've got all these people thrown in jail with no bail, for what amounts to, now some of it's assault. Okay. There are some assaults, but we're not talking about even assault with a weapon, a club maybe. But there were no guns. There was nothing else. It was not an armed insurrection of any kind. It was not an insurrection of any legitimate kind. And they're keeping these people in jail as if they let them out, all of a sudden we were going to have another insurrection, and everybody and everything was going to happen again. And it's un-American what they're doing. It's an abuse of state power. And I think the fact that they've done that while they're expunging the arrest records of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, people, let alone not even punishing them, is a dangerous precedent that we're going to have to do something about.
No, I totally agree. But on a side note, did you hear I got interviewed by the FBI for sending 2 tweets from the Capitol lawn on January 6th?
I always thought you looked a little dangerous.
I know.
Seriously, now I get it. Okay, it's all coming together now.
I know, right? It's the haircut and the Twitters.
Right.
What can you do? But I think one of the good things that I think has come out of this is, I've really been getting more involved with the Libertarians in New Hampshire, and one of the signs they have is they have this big Libertarian festival in New Hampshire called Pork Fest every single year, and Pork Fest has sold out this year for the first time in history. It's like double the biggest audience they've ever had before. And so, I guess that's something. People are starting to wake up. They're starting to pay attention. They're starting to get more involved. The Libertarians maybe are starting to suck a little bit less than the Libertarians have previously sucked. What do you think?
I have a lot of Libertarian leanings. And honestly, I think it's a wonderful philosophy. And if it was a governing system for me, I'd be fine with it. It's everybody else I worry about with that much freedom, And I think at some level, if there was, a conservatarian is where I put myself. There are some things that I think need to be governed in some way, and hopefully in the least restrictive way possible. But I think they need to be, kind of nationally and locally organized. But then past that, if people aren't hurting other people, the government should not be involved in what they're doing. Unless my action is causing actual harm, not speech, not speech is violence or crap like that. But if I'm actually hurting another person, then the government has a right to intervene. Absent that, get out of my life, get out of everyone's life, because you suck. You're talking about libertarians sucking. Government sucks at a level libertarians can never even aspire to at their worst moment. All right. So I love the libertarian philosophy. I became an anti-statist when I read Atlas Shrugged, like any number of people have. It kind of forces you to make that choice. Do I believe the state knows better what I should do, or do I know better what I should do? And it was crystal clear. I was 14 years old. I remember it, riding in a car, on a family trip. But beyond that, you can't quite, Galt's Gulch is difficult, to build.
Yes.
And so a little bit of government is needed. And then let's get out of the way and let America function, because we can do it on our own.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Atlas Shrugged, because I was one of those people that I was poo-pooed that stuff, and I was like, it's 18,000 pages long, I'm not reading that book. And I finally forced myself to do it like last fall, and it's a terrifying read when you compare it with what's going on. It's like Rand was dead on in what she predicted. It's really a
looters and moochers versus producers is a great way to look at our current dilemma. And the only funny thing is the greatest piece of that book is the fact there is a 400-page speech by the lead character. John Galt gives a 400-page speech. That is the most absurd thing in literature. So don't read that. All right. Anyone who hasn't read the book,
don't
read up to that. All right. Skip the last 400 pages, but just read to see what happens when government decides, like the left, like the woke left truly believes, that the people can't be trusted. Therefore, government must tell them what to do. And it's done in benevolence. But I don't care. Their intentions can be as good as they want. The outcome is always the same. And it's soul-crushing, incompetent abuse and oppression. And we'll have none of it.
Absolutely. Deb, the reason we learned, says, who is John Galt? Ayn Rand was a prophet.
Yes.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was. All right. So where do you think we are right now in this fight? And let me even seed this a little bit with my biggest concern. We have a legitimate enemy on the left. And from my perspective, this is like an all hands on deck moment. Like, I'm a centrist liberal with libertarian leanings. I have a lot of issues with some stances that people on the right take, but I'm like, you know what? We need to bicker about those things later. We have an existential threat that's going on right now that we all have to come together around, and then we can bicker about the rest afterwards. But the right always seems to be its own worst enemy when it comes to fighting back. And it's like, I mean, you already mentioned the Republican Party failed when they didn't file those lawsuits before the election. And I would argue that they have failed every single day since then. I mean, the fact that every Republican politician didn't come out after January 6th and say, you know what, we condemn the violence, but this was a mostly peaceful protest. Like, I mean, like,
that would have been great.
Yeah, and just throw it right back what they were doing to us all last year. That was an epic failure on the part of the establishment. What do you think?
I could not possibly agree more. And I think my book is the way, winning the Second Civil War without firing a shot requires everybody who believes that what you just said is the case to do something. All right. And the book is mostly a way to learn how we got to where we are, because you have to know how we got here to avoid doing it again. And then it's an explanation of the various ways the left has taken over the institutions that run this country, and how and what we need to do to change that. But it's not complicated. At the simplest level, do something. We used to be, and I think on the right, we were very family and work oriented. And so people were too busy to do stuff like that. We didn't have to go to school board meetings because school board people went to school board meetings. Well, guess what? That's how you get critical race theory into your school, is you leave those professional activist types to run those organizations. Well, you can't do that anymore. So you have to do what those parents in, I think it's Westlake, Texas did, where they saw critical race theory in their school. They formed a political action committee. They picked their own slate of candidates. They ran them, and they won 70% of the vote. So they ran the mayor out, the whole school board, and everybody else. We all have to do something like that. And everybody has different skills. Everybody has different interests and abilities. But even if you don't do anything more than talk to one more person, educate yourself, learn the correct ways to fight this, this battle, these arguments, the anti-woke agenda. All right. You need to base yourself in that. And based is a word I think people should learn. Based is basically fighting back against the woke agenda is called being based. All right. And I'm starting to adopt that because we need a term for it. So the based approach is to learn the basis for the counter argument and then to take the fight back to them. And that's where the Republican Party is useless. All right. But people on the right who want to vote anti-woke have to move to the forefront then and be the fighters in that party. Trump did it. You know, Trump ran as a Republican, but he was not a Republican. He had too many establishment ties, but more than anyone else, he showed if you fight back, you can win. So everybody listening and everybody else who you know, tell them that. Tell them, come with me to a school board meeting. Hey, there's a school board meeting coming. We're going. And get your friends too. And we're going to bring our team. And then because there's power in numbers. You know, the cancel culture works on individuals. You can't cancel groups of people. So get your friends together, go to school boards, go to city council meetings, back good candidates at state and local and federal level, and just stop taking their crap. Enough, you know, just say enough.
That's what I keep saying. And one of the things I find so frustrating about this time is there are more of us than there are of them. And if everyone that thought that this was nonsense just stood up and said it right now, it'd be over like that.
And let's do that. So, okay, here we go, everybody. We have to stay in our chairs to keep doing this. Later
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Right. Broadcast news. I've been considering going to CNN, you know, and just breaking into Jake Tapper's show. Jake, if you're listening. It's not, I'm speaking figuratively. But no, I mean, that's the idea, because the way they do it is everyone has been kind of, you know, intimidated by the fact that you could lose your job, you could be pushed out of polite society. You know, the left was very effective in the way they could demonize you because they controlled the media, they controlled the organs of government and all these other things. Well, guess what? If we decide we don't care what they say and think, and every time one more person stands up, one more person, or actually 3 to 4 more people, see that person stand up. And you lock arms. Think of the shield wall. You know, watch Vikings. All right.
Yes.
Watch the show Vikings.
My husband and I were just talking about this show the other day. Yes.
Right. I'm Hanson, Swanson, Pearson is my lineage. I'm 100% Viking. So get a shield wall going. Link arms with your friends, and every time they attack one of ours, even if they were slightly wrong or whatever, back them still. All right? Unless they just completely, you know, were off the charts. Play like the left does. Back our team against them, because there's no common ground anymore for the short term, meaning, you know, the next 2 to 4 years for sure. We can't afford to compromise because there's no compromise with them. So don't play along with them Republicans. Don't vote for their nominees. Obstruct everything they do. This is a war, figuratively. And the only way to win it is to treat it like one, because they do.
I completely agree with you. I'm going to give you an example that just happened in the last couple of days when Marjorie Taylor Greene made her statement. You know, and we can, you know, discuss that. But like the first thing I saw was Kevin McCarthy coming out against her. And I didn't even need to read Marjorie Taylor Greene's statement. I don't care what she said. The fact that Kevin McCarthy issued this statement against her and everyone started denouncing her, I retweeted it immediately without even reading it. I was like, what a pussy. Because like, this is like, we cannot be doing this crap. It's so stupid.
Well, and it only helps them. You're virtue signaling to who?
Yeah.
You know, oh, I'm a better person than that. It was stupid to make a Holocaust reference. There's a whole set of debate rules about whoever goes Nazi for, was it Godwin's law? Whoever makes a Nazi Hitler reference first loses the argument. Okay. Same with the Holocaust. There is no time to invoke the Holocaust except on Remembrance Day when you say never again. Other than that, it's out. But you also don't throw your team under the bus for a mistake. Dan Crenshaw did it too. And I love Dan Crenshaw. I think he's a stud. He's got a lot of great things going for him. He's also got a soft spot where he wants to be liked, like McCarthy, like Liz Cheney. They want to be patted on the back by the media and by the chattering classes. And so he went ahead and jumped on her. And I hit back at him and I said, dude, if you think she needs to hear that, do it in private.
Yeah.
You know, you can walk up to her and tell her that was stupid. But when you tweet it out, and you go ahead and get the left the opportunity to use that against our team, you're not helping, buddy.
No, absolutely not. And I think you bring up a really good point too about, I really think people on the right are just constantly striving to be accepted by the media, to be accepted by the elite, to be, you know, part of the club if it was. And it's, I think one of the very important things that we need to do in order to fight this battle effectively is we need to accept that we are never going to be accepted by them. We're never going to get acknowledgement. We're never going to get positive reinforcement. We're never going to win awards. It's always going to be this nonsense I'm experiencing on Twitter today where I put out a random idea and then all of a sudden I've got 5,000 people calling me an idiot, right? We're never going to get accepted by them. And we have to come to some degree of just acceptance with this and even embrace it.
There you go. I love nothing more than when the left hates on me.
I know, me too.
Because I hit a nerve.
The best.
Exactly. I know I hit a nerve, and I do it. I bait them. All right. My technique involves finding a leftist who said something stupid, mocking them mercilessly for it in a way that baits them into not just standing up for their position, but doubling down. Mm-hmm. Because like you said earlier, they ripped the masks off and they showed their true colors now. All right. Trump made them so mad, and the accelerationism has led them to the point where they think they can win this in the next couple of years. They think they can pack the court and throw in a couple more states, and all of a sudden, you know, they can put the thought codes and speech police in the First Amendment, and they can send Beto O'Rourke around to try and grab my guns. Well, no, it's not going to work, but it's helping our cause because they've shown how crazy they are. Mm-hmm. And now our team needs to, like you said, who cares what they say and think? They're not our people. All right. They should be. You know, they're educated, but they've been miseducated. So you can't blame them when you've been taught things that are fundamentally stupid. All right. And taught them by very, you know, PhD holding smart people who should know better, but don't. So write that off. And like you said, stop caring what they think and think about what your plumber thinks. Does your plumber think you're a good person? Because your plumber's probably a pretty solid individual, you know, and start looking at the populist view. And populism's messy. All right. Keep that in mind. There are going to be a lot of people with crazy ass conspiracy theories and this and that. And it's kind of the job of those of us who dig into stuff like this to help with that. Put out good information. My book is the main thing you can use it for is to learn the right way to argue about the things we're arguing about. And once you do that, then you're going to win more converts because you won't be saying things that can be easily disproven or that, you know, will run people away. So get yourself in the game with the people who matter, not the people who don't care about you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, Jeff Horton, thank you for the super chat. He said, did someone say Civil War? Now, this brings me to a question because, you know, when you have a book called Winning the Second Civil War, that's a little bit spicy, Jim. What do you mean when you say Civil War? How do you envision this like playing out?
And I think you've got a good enough handle on me to know I did that on purpose.
Of course you did.
And the reason is
trolling.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. and I helped popularize trolling. You know, I had one of the first blogs on a newspaper website in about 2005.
Wow.
All right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. In Madison, Wisconsin. Right. So I was the righty that the left came to hate. And so I have kind of my entire, you know, career as a pundit been the guy who provokes the left into revealing what they truly believe, but we used to be better at hiding. So we had a Cold War between left and right, you know, where there were rules to be followed. You know, we had kind of a détente, you know, similar to what we had with the Soviet Union. Yes, we disagree with you, but we're not going to fire our nukes, right? Well, we got to the point now, and I time it, and I explain this in the book to Obama. When he came into power, he could have been the uniter. You know, he could have said, isn't America great? I'm black and I'm president. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm the president. Who was it? Chris Rock or somebody used to do that, right? He didn't, though. What he did was he lit the powder keg under the activist groups. And he said, you know what? Your beefs, your grievances are real. And so you need to go ahead and stand up for them because I got your back. And Black Lives Matter formed on his watch. You know, he said, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon Martin. The police acted stupidly when they arrested Henry Gates. You know, he did things that legitimized the woke movement, and the mob formed on his watch. Well, now it's gotten to the point where 2020 was an insurrection. You know, it was an almost year-long spree of looting, rioting, burning, beating, dozens killed, all right, in these riots, hundreds of government buildings attacked. You know, government buildings were occupied for several weeks in Seattle. They had a police station that the Chaz Chop lunatics owned. All right. So if that's not an insurrection, and if that's not at least the start of a civil war potential, like you said, January 6th could have been the Fort Sumter moment, you know, where the counterattack began and all of that went. Fortunately, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that's what I want. I want to get people's attention because things have gotten so crazy. And before we start dividing the country up, before everybody heads to the hills and, I form a guerrilla army, which, is not my goal. I have the opposite of that.
Right.
I want to form a figurative guerrilla army of based Americans who will fight back against this using all of the constitutional means at our disposal. And we still have all of them.
Absolutely. The reason we learned, Deb, I posted Unwoke History class to a North Carolina homeschool forum with 14,000 members. 200 demanded it be taken down. The moderator caved. She wrote me and said she was anti-CRT, but took it down anyway. No spine. And this is a perfect example of what we're talking about. Like, the moderator had every ability to just say, no, we are not taking this down. If you don't like it, don't use it. Well, and they cave so easily.
Where did free speech become freedom from offense? That's really their goal. And that's really the woke agenda revolves around several things, but one of them, state control so that no one can get their feelings hurt. Mm-hmm. So if anyone's getting their feelings hurt, they think the state can intervene in some way to stop it. But the only way to do that is to stop people's right to speak freely. And I'm sorry, the First Amendment is the reason we exist as a country, and the Second Amendment backs it up. And if they come for either, both of those in any meaningful way, that's when we've got an actual problem. Right now, we've still basically got free speech as a legal matter, but we don't have it in our public spaces. And that's where we need to fight back. We need to, that moderator needs to be removed. So what that lady should do is get her friends together and make a move to put a new moderator in place. Get enough. All it takes. They've got mobs that they make seem bigger than they are. Yes. Right. That's how they get stuff done. So they get all this noise being made, and then they get what they want. Well, we can do that too. And like you said, there's more of us.
Mm-hmm. And I think, another good point you just made, and I want to just put a fine point on it, is like, it's not like you need that many people a lot of times in order to be able to do this. You really, really don't. Like, people think, I hear it all the time. Carlin, I can't speak up because I don't have a platform. You have a platform. That's why you have to speak up. And I'm like, well, first of all, I didn't always have a platform. I only started having a platform like a year ago. Like, secondly, you don't need to have a platform. You can just get a group of people together, storm the school board, and make it seem like you have more people than you do.
Start at a backyard barbecue.
Yeah.
People are going to get unhappy. Okay, who cares? People are always unhappy. People bitch and moan constantly. All right, stop caring. All right, because this is literally too important to care about anybody's feelings. All right, this is so far beyond feelings. We are literally at an existentially dangerous moment for the Republic. All right, so use that as your baseline. Then none of the usual, but people are going to, I'll hurt their feelings. They'll be mad at me. No, get at least two friends. If you got one friend on either side of you, you're actually a team at that point. You got one person watching your back and one person watching the rest of the mob, and then you go ahead and say your piece. And you can do that like you did, like I did when I started. When I started in Madison, Wisconsin, it was me with a video camera and a mob of angry leftists, right? Mm-hmm. And I would go to their anti-war protests or whatever, and I would walk up to whoever was saying the stupidest things at the time, and I would turn on the camera. I'd say, hey, that thing you just said, that was so dumb. You're making my brain hurt. Could you explain that to me? And they would go, right? And I would just bait them in. But it was just me. Now I have an advantage. I'm a large former Green Beret kind of guy. Okay, so physically, there's a danger level. But most of the danger people are worried about is their own feelings. Their own lack of not wanting to be excluded or banned or shunned. But get a couple friends and then stand tall.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Now, let's talk about the military for a second, because you're a former Green Beret. Mm-hmm. And have you followed what's going on with the military going woke? And what are your thoughts about it?
It is horrifying. Mm-hmm. One of the dangers is that the military is a great place to do social engineering because you can. Yeah. And now I'm not going to say some really good pieces of social engineering have happened in the military. Integration, when blacks served in the military, that predated society. Women's rights were on a forward path in the military in a lot of ways. My wife was on the 4th bird into Desert Storm in 1990 with 18th Airborne Corps. All right. So there is a history of breaking barriers, but that's not what they're doing now. They're doing this anti-racist reverse racism that is basically dividing the military. And the military used to be green is the only color, right? You know, there we go. Here we go. I'm all decked out in my stuff. But, you know, everybody is green, right? There were no black, white, brown, whatever you want. No. And now they're saying, oh, well, we have to change that. All right. So we're going to go ahead and resegregate someplace again, like they're doing with the rest of the country, where we won that battle. And the idea that somehow a woke military can accomplish its mission not nearly as well as one that's focused on deterring our enemies. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the problem. You know, I don't care if that girl has two moms. Good on her.
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad she's in the military. I'm sure she's a great troop. But having a commercial where you focus on her two mommies, not on what she's going to do in the military and why she's a good troop. She's not a good troop because she's got two mommies. She's either a good troop or she's not because of her capabilities, her experience and drive. Focus on that. Stop trying to use it as a social engineering experiment.
No, I completely agree. I just actually filmed a video yesterday where we were reacting to that commercial. And like, I feel like 10 years ago, I would have had a completely different response to that commercial than I have today. And I'd be kind of like, okay, I kind of get this. It's cool that we're seeing this story, whatever. But today I'm just like, this has no purpose. It has no I appreciate that she has this family and they've been through these struggles and that's great, but that has absolutely no relevance to what's going on in the military and why people at West Point need to take introductory classes into critical race theory and all of these things. And the military is going to be hiring, diversity officers up and down. And it's absolutely insane. Like, what type of impact do you think that this is going to have on our ability to defend ourselves effectively?
One thing that is important beyond anything else in the military is what's called esprit de corps. And that is your feeling of belonging and being one against the enemy. And they're destroying that. They're destroying that because they are resegregating things. They are taking, essentially people and now, you'll be the black troops and you'll be the trans troops and you'll be this, the same way they play identity politics with everything else. And that kills esprit de corps. As soon as you do that, and then what you start to look at is now the buzzword is equity meaning equality of outcome. All right, they just shortened it because equity sounds good, right? But it literally means equality of outcome, and it's based on, in some way, shape, or form, quotas for achievement. Mm-hmm. So now they're looking at it and they say, if there aren't enough black generals or if there aren't enough trans, cyber people, then that's systemic racism or transphobia. And therefore we have to change the outcome in order to achieve equity. Well, no, because the second you do that, you've stopped using what the military has always relied on, which is meritocracy. You get tested on your physical abilities, your mental abilities, your job skills every day in the military. And they have annual and semi-annual tests that you take. They test your ability, if you're a computer geek, to geek out. If you're an SF guy, you get tested on taking apart weapons and stuff. So all of those things are how they judge who gets promoted. Once you change that, and once you organize people into identity groups, you have destroyed esprit de corps. You've led people to believe that quotas are now driving who gets promoted rather than merit. And you're going to have a military that no longer can function. And it's a death trap.
It's so sad. So when you look at the landscape as we see it right now, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that we have to overcome in this fight?
The education is the long-term fight. The short-term fight is free speech.
Okay.
All right. And I got angry today. I wanted to break some stuff because I went to tweet out that we were going to do this. And then I looked at the engagement stats on my most recent set of tweets, and I am throttled in an exceptionally powerful way by Twitter.
You know what's funny? I went to tweet about it. I actually went to retweet your tweet, and usually when I put in someone's handle, they just pop right up. Yours doesn't at all. I was like, what is Jim's handle? I have to tag him in it because it was not coming up.
Right. And that's because I am search function banned and I am reply deboosted. And if you don't follow me already and you type in my full Twitter handle, which is what you have to do, Jim Hanson DC, it takes you to a grayed out profile. And it says this profile posts sensitive content, and you probably don't want to look at him because he's an evil right-wing nutbag.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And literally you have to go through 2 clicks to get to my actual profile and even be able to see who I am. And the reason for that is unknown to me because I have not violated any of their terms of service. I have in the 10 years I've been a member on Twitter, I have had 1 tweet I had to delete. That's it. I have not had another warning. I have not had a single interaction with the Twitter thought police that says you have done something wrong. But yet my account is flagged and my tweets, get 1/10 or less the reach they used to, and they basically shut me into a very small walled garden. And it's total garbage, right? But I can't do anything about it because, they're big nameless, faceless thing and there's no way to get back. So we have to find a way to, and I think at some level, this is going to require the next president to use executive actions and executive agencies to do this, like Trump should have. That was a huge, screaming failure of Trump, was not hammering the tech companies into submission. He should have, burnt Silicon Valley down and salted the earth and said, let's try this again. You guys are obviously losers. But the next, whoever comes in, if it's DeSantis, who I would back, I think he's got the kind of gumption to understand, like he did in Florida. And they passed a law that said, if you are taking people out of what is now essentially our shared public information space because of ideological reasons, which is what they did to me, they don't like what I say and what I talk about. Not that it's sensitive, is that it makes people feel sensitive, right? Well, we need to stop that. And so that to me is the huge battle. And that's where we have to try alternative methods, but we also have to beat them in the tech giant tyrant arena. And so that to me is the job for the next president, is to do that on behalf of everyone, because we should have free speech. Is not just the First Amendment saying the government can't do it. It's saying all Americans who are using what is essentially a commodity, which in this case, the major tech platforms are a telephone for the modern times.
I think
why can they do that? Let's stop it.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think that the tech companies should be treated like public utilities. You cannot ban people just because you don't like them. You have to provide them with service unless they do something completely off the wall illegal. And I don't know exactly where the line is, but
I'll go with inciting violence. I think we've got Brandenburg v. Ohio as a great example for that. If you're inciting violence and it may happen, then they can ban you. Short of that, no, because they've got all the tools. If people don't want to listen to me, they can mute me or they can block me. But that's not good enough for the left, because in their minds, if other people can hear me, then my dangerous, venomous, free speechy thoughts are infecting other people, and they want to stop that. So they have to shut my voice. What did Tyrion say in Game of Thrones? If you cut out someone's throat, it's not that you're scared about what they're going to convince other people. I got to get that quote. That's a good one. He's a great philosopher.
He is absolutely. Do you think Trump should run again?
No, I hope he does not. He did what is essentially a republic saving service in my mind. And I mean that because if Hillary had been elected, she would have appointed 3 Supreme Court justices. And I think we would be a lot closer to the danger zone of my book than we are now. If there were 3 more Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor's busy with whiteout on the Constitution. I think they would have allowed speech codes. I think they would already be trying to confiscate semi-automatic rifles. And so we dodged a bullet there, literally, for the Second Amendment and with the First Amendment too. And he also, the second thing he did was he showed us that fighting wins. All right. That standing up, because that was what the Republicans always said, well, we can't fight because, people will think we're mean and all this. Yeah. And guess what? You'll win. So you guys can lose like you've been doing for generations. But we have the moral high ground. And, now we're going to retire to the country club and play golf as losers, or we can fight and win. I'll take fight and win for 1,000, Alex. And that's what Trump did. But he's got to pass the torch. And like I said, I'll take DeSantis and after that, I'm not sure I got a second choice.
I like DeSantis a lot. I think that he should be the choice. Like, I'm going to be honest, like a small part of me wants Trump to run again, but purely for the entertainment value.
Right.
And I can acknowledge that it's purely for the entertainment value and not necessarily the smartest choice in the world.
But he can run next to DeSantis. You know, they can fly around on the same plane, because that's what Trump didn't like governing. Trump liked campaigning.
Trump likes rallies.
Exactly. He can go to every rally should be a Trump rally. Where Trump introduces whoever he's talking to, and then he gets what he wants. The crowd goes wild. We chant, lock whoever up. You know, we do all the fun things you do. Everybody wears the hats. Woohoo! But we have a candidate who not only can be elected because he doesn't have the negatives that Trump has, but also then DeSantis is a much more competent administrator and executive than Trump ever could be. So he served a great purpose. He changed the course of American politics and of the republic. And God bless you for that. Now be a kingmaker.
Yeah. And DeSantis is showing us, too, that he is willing to do what it takes to push this back. I mean, he's shown us repeatedly. He's based. This is like who totally he is.
Yeah, but he's done competent things. Yes. He has actually, he stood up against the whole COVID mafia. And he said, no, I don't think that's right. And I've talked to experts and I've talked to medical people, and I think we can do this. And they're like, we're all going to die. Whoa, right? And guess what? No. In one of the states with the oldest populations there is, they came in the 20s somewhere, maybe around 20 with a COVID death rate. I'm sorry, that's pretty darn good. And they didn't kill as much of their economy as other states. Right. So he did that. He also has, he's passed some legislation. He passed that tech bill. He makes things happen in ways that Trump wasn't as capable of doing. So I think I'll take him as and he's a really good, solid debater style of speaker. He knows his facts. He gets to them. He gets directly to a point. And where Trump would meander and he'd say, yeah, but those guys over there, he always would take a left turn on you. DeSantis stays focused, so I like his game.
But DeSantis is mimicking Trump's hand motions.
He does the thing.
He's watched a lot of Trump.
Funny. It's really funny to watch because he does, and it's almost got to be on purpose. You can't.
I think he is. I think
because so many people have said it now. He knows it if he didn't know it before, and keep doing it because subliminal messaging. I'm fine with that. People see that, they can feel, oh, he's Trumpian.
Not too bad. The Reason We Learn says, when you tear out a man's tongue, you are not proving him a liar. You're only telling the world that you fear what he might say. There it is, Deb.
There's Tyrion. Thank you for that. Yep. And that's true. 100%.
Absolutely. Jeff says, just thank you for being an American patriot, sir. Semper big tech who got where they are because of opportunities provided by patriots, then censor them. A shame. Do you think that the big tech companies are kind of shooting themselves in the foot with how they're behaving?
Yes, I think they've got problems, but I think they won. They won. Their goal was to take over control of the American narrative. And in the past 10 years, they did that. You literally now have a very small group of people controlling what information America gets. And that's stunning and to me completely un-American, right? But they wanted that, and their goals, the whole goals of the woke left are un-American in nature. They're Marxist, they're socialist, they're Maoist, actually more than they are any of the other ists. They're very much into struggle sessions and cultural revolutions and all that kind of stuff. So I think they succeeded, and then they may have succeeded too much. And here's the fun thing. I talked about how Google may be helping to stop, the tech revolution of people going through university with certificates. Good. But this, have you heard of this woman, Timnit Gebru, the artificial intelligence?
I've heard of it. I haven't looked into it much, though.
She was running the artificial intelligence ethics team at Google. And she's Black, and she assembled a very diverse team. So she had, every flavor of woke on her team. And they wanted to put out a paper on how AI is unwoke. All right. So their paper was basically AI at Google is unwoke. And they've submitted it. like you have to do to the powers that be at Google. And these people who are serious scientists and company representatives looked at it and said, well, A, the science is garbage. This is essentially just woke propaganda. It's not a technical paper in any way. And you need to fix all that and stop saying all this horrible stuff about how Google is racist and white supremacist and all that. You can't do that. We're not going to sponsor that. Well, they put it out anyhow. They just said, well, no, because we're working for a higher cause. It's a secular religion to those people.
Yes.
And so because of that, they've well, God wants us to do it, or Gaia wants us to do it, right? So they put it out, and she got fired, right? Because she violated a ton of Google rules. And what happened was then a revolt started. And so now there are thousands of Google employees who essentially have joined her cause because Google's not woke enough.
Wow.
And so their internal revolts, I call it the woke circular firing squad, right? Because once you tell people that your job is to figure out what your identity group is, and then to generate grievances based on that identity, and then we will gather spoils and distribute them because of that. That's the woke, grift. That's how it works. Well, okay. It also means that you've got people now who have been trained to look for grievances everywhere. And so now if you don't get promoted, you say, well, I didn't get promoted because I'm not as good. No, I didn't get promoted because I'm black or trans or whatever. Pick your identity, right? And you were discriminated against by the white supremacist company because of that. So there is an internal revolt at Google that is really damaging to them and is happening. Coca-Cola had to fire their top diversity person for that critical race theory garbage.
Well, what's interesting about that, because they didn't actually fire him. They just gave him a fat consulting deal.
Oh,
and
really?
Then
Yes,
cheated. They did. They cheated.
That's good. Well, the other tech companies are having the same problem.
Yeah.
So there is at Apple and some of these other places, the expectations of their woke employees are so impossible. They're not just unreasonable; they're impossible to meet, and consequently, they're looking now at basically internal insurrections of people who are no longer happy with the wokeness of these excessively woke corporations.
Absolutely. So one of the most kind of terrifying things to me about this whole ideology, and I keep trying to explain this to people because they try to make it seem like this is just about creating a more fair and just society and making sure that black and white people have equal, access to, well, we would say outcomes, they might say opportunities, but they try to make it seem like it's about race. I don't think it's about race at all. I think it's about destabilizing the entire system. And that's why they're labeling things as systemic racism. It's not about individuals anymore. It's about the system. And I got to tell you, today on Twitter, it's so fascinating to me to look at the responses from these people, because these people actually don't think that parents should have any say in the education of their children. They think that their children are already fully grown, fully formed human beings, and they should be able to go to the schools and have their privacy. They also don't understand the difference between a public school funded by our tax dollars and a private business or a private home. And I really think it's because they're being taught that these things are all kind of like everything is everyone's, right? It's kind of like, it's like a communist utopia view. And it's fascinating to watch it play out, because I think they're trying to destabilize the system so that they can rebuild it in their own little Marxist image. Am I way off base there?
You're 100% deadly bullseye target on that. No, and that's what they're doing. And here's the thing, racism and race is such a perfect place to start. And that's why Black Lives Matter is, they're shock troops for this. Because racism was such an egregious stain on the country that you can never wash it off fully. All right. So no matter what we do, there's always the founding was racist. Okay. And that's true. Now, since then, and even then, we were the most advanced and free country. And every day since, we've gotten more advanced and more free. And every other country in the world is more racist than America. I've been around the world twice. I've seen goats float in a boat. Trust me, every place else is more racist than us. They just get credit for it because our system's so open. So they want to use race then, like you said, to take these abilities for people to have their individual liberty, because they say, well, your individual liberty is causing you to you know, discriminate against people, and you've built these systems that are founded on white supremacy, and therefore we have to tear those down. But like you said, it's not just on the cause of race. That's just the best, that's the most easily marketable one, right?
Yeah.
Because, oh, what are you going to say? Slavery didn't matter? What are you? You're racist. No. So I think you're dead on in what they're doing, and then they want state control. You know, and now what flavor of state control? Okay, we can call it woke, Maoist, Marxist. It doesn't matter. Totalitarian. All right. They want a totalitarian or authoritarian system where the state tells people, because they don't like the decisions people make. You know, people with individual liberty do crazy stuff, right? They eat cows. They drive V8, you know, automobiles instead of riding on public transit like good lemmings. You know, they do all these things that the left thinks are damaging. And so you're absolutely right that the stalking horse or the Trojan horse is racism. It's actually kind of both. And they will use that, though, to destroy the systems they call systemically racist, homophobic, transphobic, etc. And then they will replace those with state-sanctioned, you know, rule-making entities that take your kids from cradle to grave and turn them into, you know, nice little non-player character, good little sheep.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny. I was at the chiropractor right before this because I'm an old lady now. I have to get fixed like every week. And every time I go to the chiropractor, he's like, "Who are you pissed off at now?" And I'm like, "Everyone."
Yeah, the
like,
list is too long.
It's a perpetual state of being. But he was telling me today that his daughter in a public high school, like 20 minutes away from where I live, had to was taught this book by her teacher that was for 5 weeks. They spent on this book that was equating capitalism with slavery and saying that capitalism only came out of slavery. They spent 5 weeks on this book and only 1 week on World War II.
You know, and it's so fundamentally dumb. That's why they don't want cameras in the classrooms.
Yes.
Right. To your point in your Twitter spat is they don't want people to see the garbage they're attempting. And you can teach kids anything. You know, you give me a 2-year-old kid 10 years from now, I'll have him believe anything you want if I have total control. All right. But that's wrong. You know, that's wrong. And it's certainly wrong for the state to be the decider. All right. As messy as it is, the only reason America exists was for individual liberty, for the right for people, the citizen, to be sovereign, not the state to be sovereign. And they want to flip that. And I think that's the civil war we're in. You know, it's statism versus individualism. They're winning. All right. And I wish they weren't, but they are winning. But we're better at it. We were just distracted. All right. The idea that we're going to lose to this collection of, you know, arugula, artisanal arugula chomping, soy latte sipping pajama boys and girls is a joke, but we're losing. So that's why we need the call to arms. We need everybody to get off the couch and go do something. You know, get in the fight, get in the shield wall, and we'll beat them. You know, it's going to take a while, but we'll have some short-term victories. We're going to win the House in 2022. All right, which is going to be fun.
I hope. I don't know. With the Republicans, the way they're going, I'm like, I don't even know.
And we're going to do it because I say we're going to do it. And here's why. Because I want them to impeach Joe Biden. Right. And I don't care what for. There's plenty. I mean, he committed FARA violations with his son. All right. There is evidence of crimes he committed that they hid under the table. So you got legitimate reasons to do it. But I think just to prove a point, the second that the gavel comes down on a Republican House, I would drop an article of impeachment and let's play. Let's do this, dude. And then let's say now we could stop. All right. And we could get back to actual crimes for this, but not until you guys get a little payback. Because they won't understand it otherwise.
Well, I'll tell you what, if the Republicans take back the House and they don't impeach Joe Biden, like they should be everyone needs to leave the Republican Party en masse if that happens. I'm sorry. Like there needs to be, because this is where I get frustrated with Republican voters. It's like they talk a big game, they talk about rhino hunting, they talk about, you know, putting good America First MAGA people in there. But when it comes down to push or shove, they will vote for these rhino candidates every single time. And I'm like, if they're not going to do anything, then why are you electing them? Let them lose. It might suck for a minute, but they got to learn a lesson. The Republican Party has to learn a lesson, and the only way they learn is if they lose.
That's 100% fair point, and I'm kind of split because I'm a big tent guy. All right. My belief is we need to grow our piece of the electorate into a governing majority, something, and we'll always be a little behind population wise. Thank God for federalism. But we need to get to the point where we have enough people in our tent that we're all our states are safe. But then, like you said, we got to punch Liz Cheney in the mouth, and that was a great thing to do. All she had to do was shut up. Shut up. Stop it. Stop helping the other side and let's get on with our business. She's like, nah, I like going on CNN. So we need to have that combination of carrot and stick. And I think there are some people who need to get clubbed and need to get primaried. And let's do that. Let's put better candidates up, because I want a fighting majority in the House. I don't want a weak, spineless rhino majority.
Mm-hmm. Well, to that point, like, I heard a rumor that when Liz Cheney walked into that room when they voted her out of that position, I heard a rumor that they gave her a standing ovation before they voted her out. I swear. And now I was like, I cannot handle this. I can't grow a spine.
I'll just see if I can find out about that. I hadn't heard that. That surprises me because no one spoke for her in that meeting. All right. So there was a time where if anyone, there was an offer made to, if anyone wants to come up and speak, on behalf of Liz Cheney before we take this vote, do it now. And not even Kinzinger or any of the other, complete losers. Really? No. So nobody spoke for her, but whatever. I mean, it's the bottom line is we don't do enough of that, and we need to. They need to suffer, and we need to cull the herd. We need to get the weak out and put stronger people in our position. And, the fighting wing of the Republican Party needs to be one. And the more populist we get, the better we'll get at that. So I think, we're trending that direction. But let's cause some damage on the way. I'm in.
I dearly hope so. Well, I want to end on a point you just made a couple minutes ago where, maybe about a week ago or so, I started trying to impress upon people the idea that we are losing this war, because I started seeing people and we should get very excited that states are starting to knock down CRT in education. That's very exciting. I think there's now 3 or 4 states that have passed bills, and that's good. That's progress. But at the same time, that's not everything. That is not the war. We can't even enforce these laws yet. In fact, teachers in Tennessee are so brazen about this. They actually came out and said, nah, I'm just going to ignore the laws and teach what I want to teach anyway. And so I see people get very excited about these things, and they think that, oh, these laws are happening. I don't need to do anything. I can pack up and go home. No, we're losing right now.
No doubt. What do you think? Oh, no, I 100% agree. We are way behind. Like I said, we are generations behind because they own our kids. All right. And they get a chance, anybody who works and sends their kids to public school, they got more time with your kid than you do. So keep that in mind. And don't think for a second that we can be complacent. That's how we got here. All right. We got here by thinking that, it's stable. There's some crazies at the universities and they have their hippy dippy sit-ins and stuff like that. No, they have infiltrated every institution of this country. And consequently, we have to take that ground back. And that takes all of you. Everybody out there has to get up and do something. So get educated, get in the fight, and we'll win. We're going to win. All right. I mean, I don't even want to talk about worst case scenario because we got a plan.
No, we need to think positively. We need to have a positive vision.
Right. And that's just it. All right. It does no good to talk, we'll have a national divorce. We'll split the country up. That is way not going to happen. So our options are continue to watch this slip away from us until the republic is something the founders won't even recognize, or get in the fight, beat these people back until we've got some sort of détente. I will coexist. They don't want to, but we can beat them by numbers to the point where we can force them to coexist with us. And they'll be angry and unhappy about it. And that'll be fun. We can enjoy that. But we got to get them there. And that takes everybody getting in the game.
And I think that this is a war of attrition. This is like everyone's got to be fighting and fighting and fighting and not giving up. I don't care if you think we're winning or not, because the first people that give up are the ones that are going to lose.
Amen to that. I'm in.
All right. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this chat. Jim, thank you again for coming on the channel. It is always a pleasure. Always a great conversation. Again, Jim's book is Winning the Second Civil War Without Firing a Shot. I believe it's on Amazon right now, right?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, even Target.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah,
And the link to Amazon is in the description below. Jim also wrote another fabulous book of basically debunking white fragility. So if you want to get both books as a package deal, I'm sure you can. But Jim, thank you for coming on the channel. We appreciate it. And guys, guess what? This is not my last stream of the day because I have procured Will from that epic struggle session video that we watched last week. Jim, did you see the struggle session video going around?
Yeah.
I got the guy at the center of the struggle session. He is going to be on this channel at 9 p.m. tonight, and we're going to talk about what it was like to be in a legit Mao struggle session.
Oh, I'll be back. I'll watch. I'll be in the audience.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, we will see you a little bit later on today. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.